She offered a future president LSD, took the stage at Woodstock, and defined the psychedelic 1960s with a voice that could shatter glass. Grace Slick lived through every excess rock and roll had to offer, surviving decades of addiction. But now, at 86, she's breaking her silence to share a different kind of update, one no one saw coming, and one she's avoided for years. Before we uncover what really happened, tell us in the comments, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about this story? The silence from Grace Slick over the decades has always been louder than her music. Fans assumed age or fading relevance kept her away, but new information reveals a deliberate and deeply personal decision that started long before her 80s. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe so you never miss our next documentary. While the world romanticized the chaos of the 1960s, Grace was quietly documenting her own destruction. She didn't just stop singing. She started painting not as a hobby, but as a necessary form of survival. These weren't celebratory works of a rock icon, but dark, introspective canvases that mapped her mental and physical collapse. What she put on those canvases suggests she was coming to terms with the reality that the machine she helped build was also consuming her alive. While the public assumed Grace Slick's silence was simply a choice born of age or indifference, a more urgent reality was unfolding behind closed doors. The body that had endured decades of excess, the bottles of Jack Daniels, the endless nights, the chemical indulgences, was finally sending its final invoices. She had survived the 60s, something many of her contemporaries could not claim. But survival, she would learn, was not the same as escaping unscathed. In her Malibu home, surrounded by 4 air conditioners aimed directly at her feet to keep them cold, Grace manages a condition few fans have ever heard of, erythromelalgia, a rare neurovascular disease that causes her extremities to burn with an intensity that defies description. She cannot stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. The condition, combined with what she humorously but chillingly describes as 3 deadly diseases, has transformed her existence into a quiet battle fought within the walls of her studio. She has fallen into a coma in recent years and had to relearn how to walk. The image of the defiant rock goddess who once offered LSD to the President of the United States is now replaced by something far more fragile and far more human. Yet Grace refuses to be pitied. She has never taken care of her health. She admits with characteristic bluntness, eating what she wants, avoiding exercise, and marveling that she's still alive at all. Her survival is almost accidental, a cosmic joke she seems both bewildered and amused by. There is no regret in her voice, no plea for sympathy, only a matter-of-fact acceptance of the price that was always waiting to be paid. The update she shares now isn't one of despair. It is, perhaps unexpectedly, an update of clarity. She has made peace with the physical collapse because it allowed her to escape something worse. The body she destroyed gave her the excuse she needed to finally walk away from a machine that had already consumed her soul. If this story surprised you, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. But while her body failed, something else inside her refused to die. And it's that quiet resilience that leads us to the next chapter of her story. The voice that defined a generation went silent on stage, but another form of expression took its place. Grace Slick had always painted. It was her first love, the thing she studied before rock and roll ever entered the picture. And when she finally walked away from music at 50, she returned to the canvas not as a retreat, but as a homecoming. Her studio became the dining room of her Malibu home, a space she describes with characteristic self-deprecation as the usual nutter-looking slob artist arrangement. There, surrounded by the 4 air conditioners aimed at her feet to manage her erythromelalgia, she began producing work that would find its own audience and its own surprising success. In one early gallery showing, she sold approximately $50,000 worth of paintings, proving that her creative instincts were far from diminished. The subjects she chooses reveal as much about her inner world as any song lyric ever did. She paints her fallen comrades, Jerry Garcia with a gentle, almost reverent gaze, Janis Joplin beaming beneath a crown of flowers, Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix captured in moments of quietude rather than chaos. These are not the sensationalized portraits of rock stars in their excess. They are memorials, painted by someone who outlived them all and carries the weight of that survival. Then there is her obsession with Alice in Wonderland, the White Rabbit, the Mad Hatter, the surreal landscapes of Lewis Carroll's imagination. It is no coincidence that the song that defined her career, White Rabbit, sprang from those same pages. She has explained that the white rabbit signifies curiosity, and that following that curiosity is a good idea because you don't want to be sitting around at my age going, gee, I was too scared to go for it. In her paintings, she returns again and again to that figure, as if reminding herself of the quality that saved her, the refusal to stop asking questions. But her art is also unapologetically political and playful. One of her most famous pieces, Woodstock, reimagines the legendary festival not as the muddy, chaotic mess she actually experienced, waiting backstage for hours, loaded on cocaine and alcohol, finally taking the stage at 6 in the morning, but as a vibrant cartoon populated by musicians, spiritual figures, and even a young Barack Obama playing basketball in the crowd. It is revisionist history, yes, but it is also an act of reclamation. She is taking ownership of the myth, reshaping it into something that reflects her own values rather than the ones imposed upon her. When asked about the disconnect between her ferocious stage persona and the gentle, sometimes whimsical nature of her paintings, she offers no apology. She has always been a study in contradictions. The acid queen who painted with the tenderness of a schoolgirl, the rock star who preferred the solitude of her dining room to the roar of the stadium. In retirement, she found a way to express herself on her own terms, without the drugs, without the pressure, without the machinery that had nearly consumed her. If this story surprised you, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. She has never been interested in nostalgia, in reliving her glory days. The past, for Grace, is a place she visits only on canvas, where she can control what is remembered and how. But even as she paints her own history with a brush instead of a microphone, she has made one thing clear: she has no regrets about walking away. She went a decade past where she should have stopped, she once admitted, and in that decade, she gave the world "We Built This City," a song she openly despises. The art is her redemption, a way of proving that her creative spirit outlasted the excess that tried to destroy it. Yet the question remains, if she can still create, can still communicate, can still stir emotion in those who encounter her work, what happened to the woman behind the paint? What does she think about now, in the quiet hours, when the canvases are dry and the memories come uninvited? The public narrative has always framed Grace Slick's retirement as a simple decision. She was tired, she wanted to paint, she had nothing left to prove. But beneath that surface lies a far more complicated and bitter truth. She didn't just leave the spotlight. She fled from a machine that had betrayed her, and she's never forgiven it. By the late 1980s, Grace Slick had become a prisoner of her own success. The voice that once commanded Woodstock was now being used to sell cars and soft drinks through songs she despised. We Built This City, the 1985 hit that reached #1 on the Billboard charts when she was 46, became a source of profound embarrassment. She has been openly vocal about her disdain for the track, calling it corporate rock at its most soulless. The woman who once sang about revolution and altered consciousness was now a cog in a commercial wheel, and she knew it. The turning point came when she was asked to perform at a show and found herself being airlifted onto the stage. She called it ridiculous. She was in her late 40s, still a fierce presence, yet the industry had already begun treating her like a novelty act. There was no dignity left in it. So in 1989, she walked away from music entirely, not with a farewell tour or a grand announcement, but with quiet finality. She told herself she would never perform on stage past 30, and she mostly stuck to it. The few returns she made were for charity or short tours, never for the love of the stage. But the grudge runs deeper than just musical disappointment. The same industry that made her famous had also enabled her destruction. The drugs, the alcohol, the endless pressure to produce, tour, perform, it nearly killed her. She watched Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and Jimi Hendrix die, yet the machine didn't slow down. It just kept turning, waiting for her to join them. She survived, but not because the industry cared. She survived because she finally said no. Even now, she refuses to sign autographs on her old albums at art shows. She wants to be known as an artist, not a musician. The past, for Grace, is a closed book. She doesn't revisit it with nostalgia. She revisits it with a brush, on her own terms, in her own time. And she has made it clear that she has no intention of returning to the world that almost destroyed her. If this story surprised you, share it with someone who would enjoy uncovering forgotten Hollywood stories. But a woman who has survived addiction, health crises, and the wreckage of an industry that chewed up and spit out so many of her peers is not defined by what she left behind. She is defined by what she chose next. And what she chose next would become her greatest act of defiance yet. The Grace Slick who emerges at 86 is not the defiant acid queen of the 1960s, nor the embittered retiree who walked away from music. She is something far more unexpected. A woman who has found peace not in silence, but in a new kind of noise. In a recent interview, she revealed plans that no one could have predicted. She is forming a punk band with her son-in-law. I thought, nobody ever talks about bodily functions, she explained with her signature cackle. So we're doing a song called Yankin' Boogers and Blowing Gas. Everybody's got a nose and an ass. And there's another one called Hernes and Hot Flashes. At an age when most of her contemporaries are content with quiet retirement, Grace Slick is recording songs about bodily functions and punk rebellion. She knows exactly how absurd it sounds. It'll be interesting to see what kind of repercussions I get from that, she laughed. This is the final update, the one no one saw coming. She has spent decades refusing to sing, declaring the music industry dead to her. Yet here she is, preparing to record again, not because she owes anyone a return, but because she's finally doing it entirely on her own terms. There is no corporate machine behind her, no radio-friendly hit to manufacture. There is only the raw, unfiltered expression of a woman who has survived everything and now refuses to be polite about it. The health battles remain. She still suffers from erythromelalgia, still cannot stand for more than 10 minutes, still lives with what she bluntly calls 3 deadly diseases. Her sleep patterns are erratic, an hour and a half here, 2 hours there, an existence governed by the whims of an aging body that has been pushed far beyond its limits. But she has stopped waiting for death to come quietly. Instead, she is laughing at it, mocking it, writing songs about it. If you enjoyed this documentary, like the video and subscribe for more true celebrity stories every week. There is something profoundly defiant about this final chapter. Grace Slick has never been interested in nostalgia, in performing the role of a grateful elder stateswoman of rock. She doesn't want to be remembered as a museum piece. She wants to be remembered as she always was, irreverent, unapologetic, and utterly uninterested in what anyone thinks of her. Rock and roll people are spoiled brats, she once said with a throaty cackle. We don't know anything about anything except having fun, how much money we can spend, and who we can screw. That same refusal to take anything seriously, even herself, is what has carried her through decades of chaos, addiction, health crises, and loss. At 86, she is still breaking rules, still offending sensibilities, still finding joy in the most unexpected places. The update she shares is not a farewell. It is an announcement. She is not done yet. The voice that defined a generation may never again sing White Rabbit on a stadium stage, but it will be heard again, singing about Hernes and hot flashes, about the absurdity of aging, about everything that polite society pretends doesn't exist. It is the most Grace Slick thing she could possibly do. She has spent her life following the White Rabbit, refusing to sit around at her age and wonder what might have been. And now, at 86, she is still chasing it, not with LSD, not with the roar of a stadium crowd, but with a microphone in her hand and a song about bodily functions on her lips. Some things, it turns